People must learn the pointlessness of using rhino horns because it has no medicinal value whatsoever. It has the same medicinal value as your fingernails. This is a non-sustainable practice. They've lost all the rhinos in Asia. We're fast running out of wild rhinos in Africa, and especially in Southern Africa. My name is Tony Williamson, and I am the owner of Motlabetsi Safari Lodge, and I've been here for 22 years.
In addition to running the Motlabetsi Safari Lodge, Tony is a park ranger. An important part of his ranger duties is to keep a careful watch for poachers. It's a never-ending battle, but fortunately, he has some help.
I'm Rhian Ahlers. I'm section warden of the York section of Baluli, which is part of the greater Kruger system. And yeah, I've been employed here now for going about 17 years.
Rhian is responsible for ensuring everything runs smoothly in the park. His responsibilities include maintaining the fences, protecting the flora and fauna, ensuring guests of the park are safe, and most importantly, preventing poaching.
Yeah, day to day is not, it's definitely not set in stone. It's from dealing with animal welfare up to staff issues, up to chasing possible poachers for a couple of days. So there's no day-to-day set in stone program that gets followed. You know, obviously poaching takes the priority at the moment. It comes and goes. It's like, I won't say necessarily it's gone up. The last couple of weeks has been good for the area. We haven't lost that many. You go through periods where the area loses. You know, I'm not talking just by me in the reserve, but you go through times where you lose 4 in a week. Usually our peak times are full because they can track easier and see the rhino easier at night.
Rhian and Tony have to remain vigilant and constantly on the lookout. Poaching platoons look for any opportunity to enter the park and kill these animals.
Paramilitary groups come into Kruger Park all the time to shoot rhinos. Subsistence people living on the outside of Kruger come in with axes and machetes and kill rhino that way. But all they're after are the 2 horns on a rhino's nose. The rest of the carcass is left behind. The Kruger Park faces big challenges from their eastern neighbor, which is Mozambique, where well-armed platoons basically come into Kruger. Typically, a poaching group coming in from Mozambique would consist of their main leader, who's carrying a high-caliber rifle, such as a .375 or a .458 high-caliber rifle, which would kill a rhino with 1 shot. He's normally backed up with at least 1 person who's his guard, and he's carrying an AK-47 semi-automatic rifle or an automatic rifle that he would use to protect the whole group. And then you'd normally have a couple of younger men walking with him, learning the trade, as well as carrying water, food, maybe axe or machete to remove the horn. So typically a group might be 4 to 5 to 6 people moving around. And the Kruger Park authorities tell us that at any given time there can be at least 5 of these platoons operating within Kruger. In the last 20 or 25 years or so, poaching has escalated in Kruger, where the most highly poached animal now is the rhino, the black rhino and the white rhino.
There are 5 species of rhino that still exist today. 2 are found in Africa and 3 in Asia. Africa is known for the white rhino and the black rhino, the 2 species most widely known by the average person. The white rhino is the largest of the 5 remaining rhino species. It has a wide mouth made for grazing on grasses. Their wide mouth is also what gave them their name. When the Dutch arrived in South Africa, they saw the white rhino and called them Weit, with a V meaning wide. Later, when British imperialists came to South Africa, they misunderstood Weit to be white with a W, giving the white rhino its name. In the end, they decided to call the other species of rhino the black rhino because the first was called white. Black rhinos and white rhinos, however, show no difference in color. The distinguishing feature is the mouth of the black rhino, more narrow and pointy, and their bodies are slightly smaller than white rhinos. Their feeding habits also distinguish them. Black rhinos feed on the leaves from bushes and tree branches, while white rhinos eat grass. Asia is home to 3 separate species of rhino: the Indian, the Javan, and the Sumatran rhino. All three are highly endangered and highly protected. They are much smaller than their African cousins, and each has been hunted nearly to extinction. The target of the poachers is the horn of the rhino.
There's been a demand for rhino horn by Eastern cultures for hundreds and thousands of years. And sadly, the rhino is all but extinct in Asia, and the demand or the pressure started coming onto African rhino.
The Eastern market for it is a lot higher. Most of it would go to the East now.
Across Asia and parts of the Middle East, various countries are demanding rhino horn for either medicinal purposes or for frivolous art pieces and decoration. In the Middle Eastern country of Yemen, rhino horn is especially popular among Muslim men for decorative purposes. The horns are carved and often embellished with jewels to create the handles of the culturally significant Jambiya dagger. The Jambiya dagger is important in Yemeni Muslim culture because it symbolizes manhood and the individual man's devotion to Islam. In China, rhino horn has been in demand for thousands of years. That demand led to the extinction of the Asian rhino. The horn was often used for decorative art. Usually, the horns were carved into ceremonial cups, hairpins, buttons, belt buckles, and paperweights. Rhino horn is also a popular medicinal tool in many Asian cultures. In traditional Chinese medicine, rhino horn is said to cure fever, headaches, vomiting, gout, typhoid, and even devil possession. To use the horn in medicine, it is ground into a fine powder and dissolved in boiling water. The patient would then drink the hot liquid. Vietnam also remains a major black market hub for rhino horn trading. It is seen as a status symbol. Rhino horn medical treatments are also popular in Vietnam. The horn, just like with traditional Chinese medicine, is often ground up and consumed. It is commonly used to help with hangovers, colds, and even some cancer treatments. Contrary to popular belief, rhino horn is never really used as an aphrodisiac. According to a report on NPR, in the past couple of years, the value of rhino horn has skyrocketed to more than $1,400 an ounce. That's roughly the same price as an ounce of gold. The use of rhino horn has become a national trend in Vietnam and is still a popular product in China. So while rhino poaching and poaching in general has been an issue for hundreds of years, the increased demand in those two countries has caused poaching to spike in South Africa in the past 20 years.
Kruger Park's got a long history of poaching. Initially, when it was proclaimed, you had what we call subsistence poaching, people living on the outskirts of the Kruger Park who would make their way in, mainly to capture animals for eating, for food for themselves and their families. As colonial powers moved out of Africa, we had liberation armies who were well armed and were recruited by merchants who were wanting to transport rhino horn to the east. So we had rhinos being decimated right from the north down, from Somalia, from Kenya, from Tanzania, from Uganda, from Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana. All of these countries lost virtually their entire herds of rhinos. So the only area in the world really now where there is a large number of rhinos is the Kruger National Park in particular, and South Africa in general. South Africa had a long history of preserving white rhino. They virtually brought them back from extinction. This is one of the great success conservation stories in the world of how we brought white rhinos back from extinction. They're sadly heading back towards extinction because of the demand for their horn.
The increase in poaching has resulted in an escalation of the war between those who want to protect the endangered animals and those who want to cash in. Both sides have resorted to extreme measures. New technology is being developed to stop poaching in its tracks. According to a report in the Telegraph UK, a new wide area surveillance system known as postcode Meerkat was set up near the border of Mozambique. This new technology uses a powerful radar with an infrared laser and camera to monitor a large area of land. The radar picks up on movement within a 60 square mile radius. A ranger is stationed to watch the radar screen and keep a lookout for suspicious moving dots. If unusual movement is detected, the ranger is able to switch to the infrared camera to identify what is causing the movement. If it's a group of poachers, the ranger will alert a nearby anti-poaching unit to apprehend the poachers. According to the Telegraph UK report, after just 40 days of operation, this system helped detect 55 poachers, most of whom were caught and arrested. The postcode Meerkat could change the war on poaching forever, but it comes with a hefty price tag. This first system costs 785,000 euros, which comes out to roughly $1 million US. That cost may limit the number of units employed to stop poachers. The private and government-owned portions of the park deal with and prevent poaching in very different ways. The government-owned portion of the Kruger Park gets funding from the South African government to build special anti-poaching teams to patrol and keep a constant lookout for poachers. Government funding also goes into new technology, like the postcode Meerkat, to help secure the border of Kruger Park near Mozambique. Unfortunately, the private sections of the park lack the same amount of funding, limiting their ability to keep poachers off their land. Fortunately, neighboring reserves are usually good to each other and will alert their neighbors of poaching activity. Most of the rangers from each of the reserves will spend part of their day patrolling, looking for signs of poaching activity. Each major area of the private section of the park also has a warden like Rhian, who runs a team of rangers who not only patrol, but also maintain border fences and keep track of the animals moving through the different areas of the park. Sadly, even with all of these protections, poaching remains a major problem.
Everybody is involved in rhino poaching, sadly. There is so much money in it. Our challenges on the western side of Kruger are a little bit different, because here we have local South African people coming through access gate, cutting their way through fences and coming in to hunt rhino.
There's no set way of reacting on an incursion. Obviously the fresher we find it, the better, because we can react quicker on it and stand a chance to apprehend them. It's a number of things that we've put on fences, sensors, to see when an incursion occurs, and then also we do perimeter patrols every morning to look for fresh signs of an incursion. And then, the sooner we find it, the better. We do use dogs, especially on a fresh track. We'll run dogs. Air support comes in quite handy to give your ground troops time to catch up to them, because you keep them down with either a helicopter or a fixed wing.
Many parts of the park have now decided to start using new methods to help end rhino poaching by altering the rhino's horn in a few different ways.
Some of the measures that have been taken with white rhino, or with rhino in general, is to dart them and then inject poisonous substances or dyes into their horns in order to make the horn less valuable if it is taken off the carcass and moved on to onto the next level of the trade. It's not always that effective, because often a poacher will kill a rhino without realizing that it has had the horn treated. Another way of doing it is that in various reserves, horns have been removed, so a rhino without horns can still function normally, but it doesn't have that value of the horns. That sometimes works against the animal though, because rhinos might track that animal for some length of time, realize that it has no horns, and then they will shoot it, kill it, so that they don't waste their time on it again. It's done in reserves that are finite reserves. They're fenced around, and generally the rhinos are owned by private individuals.
The procedure for removing the horn seems gruesome and cruel, but it's done to save the animals from being a target of poachers. The rhino will recover.
A rhino horn is not fixed to the skull. It's compacted animal hair. They dart the rhino and they remove the horns with a saw or with a chainsaw. Okay. They can't take it all the way down to the bottom. It's not fixed to the skull, so it's normally cut about so far away so that there's no damage to nerves or skin, but it does regrow. Rhino horn grows continually through its life. It gets worn down and sharpened through its everyday actions. So if you cut off the horn, it will regrow. It would normally take 5 to 6 years for that horn to recover. So there's really no any sort of damage to the rhino. However, you can't really do it with rhinos in the wild because they need those horns for fighting and they need those horns for defense. In an area like the Kruger Park, we don't do it because we believe that the animals must be natural here.
This new kind of poaching prevention continues with ID chips. The chips are now placed in the horns of rhinos so that when poaching occurs, it will be easier to prosecute the poacher.
We'll dart a rhino, we'll put a chip in his horn, both horns, and we'll collect DNA from the animal itself as well, so which obviously of the horn as well. So what happens with that just makes it easier when horns does get confiscated, it links it to the crime scene.
The process for chipping the rhino horn is painless. First, the rhino is darted, causing it to fall into a deep slumber. Then, while the animal is prone, rangers will come in and insert the chip. They do this by drilling a small hole in each horn. After the hole has been drilled, they place the chip into the hole and fill the hole with a silicone-based substance. By the time the substance is hardened, the rangers are gone, the rhino is awake, and the poachers have absolutely no way of knowing that the chip is in the horn.
The big thing behind the chipping is the DNA collection that goes through, it's called the Rhodes project in honor support, the veterinary side of the University of Pretoria. So they collect the whole database for the whole country, and the chip, the ID, it's really just the ID pet that we put in the horn and in the skin as well, and that's really just for, if we do come on the carcass, you can just scan it and have a quicker link for the DNA database. It makes it easier to put the suspect on the crime scene. This specific case, just to elaborate on that, it's suspects that was caught really far from here, and they were caught in a different incident, but the DNA collected on them put them on a crime scene by us as well. So that wouldn't even have been, thought about if that wasn't collected. So now they linked it to two possible scenes, which just makes it stronger for conviction.
There are other ways the Kruger Park system keeps track of its animals.
We notch ears. We do also mark the horns. So the animal is virtually tagged. We know the individual animals. So that each rhino, or certainly in the private reserves, is very often identified by the notching in its ears. You'll find that each one has very distinctive notches taken out of its ears, and there's a database held of that. There is a lot of marketing being done at the end countries where these are happening, such as Vietnam, Korea, China, Cambodia, Laos. They're all destinations. Even high-profile actors like Jackie Chan, who we all know from Hollywood comedies and Hollywood action movies, even he is involved, and there's a lot of big billboards up in airports, places, with him talking against the scourge of rhino poaching.
A large portion of the money raised to help prevent rhino poaching goes into research for new technologies to confront and capture poachers. In addition to that technology, fair trade offers up another way for people to help discourage poaching.
Fair trade is a trading relationship that we enter into with artisans in developing countries, and the goal behind that is poverty alleviation. So we make sure that the artisans who are hand making everything that we sell are being paid both up front and also a living wage in their country. We want to help bring marginalized artisans to a marketplace. In South Africa, the country, we work with an artisan group called African Home, and they are based in Cape Town, and they work with artisans in rural areas around Cape Town. Fair trade allows the people who actually make the products to support their families, to have a sustainable income solution, send their children to school. Basically, it really starts to help to break the cycle of poverty because it provides opportunity for people in areas where there might not be opportunity for them otherwise. While it doesn't necessarily directly combat poaching, it combats that poverty that the impetus for doing illegal things like poaching can create. So by creating jobs and giving people a safe, healthy way to earn a fair living, it takes away the motivation to engage in activities like poaching. The other thing that it does is it fosters education. A lot of the cooperatives that we work with have education programs for finance and business and healthcare and also environmental education. So it helps raise their awareness of their surrounding environment, which hopefully leads to less motivation to engage in activities that undermine it.
While fair trade seems like a minor solution to the issue of poaching, money is the main motivator for poachers. Showing them an alternative way to make money could help discourage poaching of not just rhinos, but many other unique and beautiful species.
And a rhino is obviously the big thing. It's what grabs the attention, but that's really not the only, there's lion, there's pangolin, it's elephant. There's a lot more to it than just rhino.
Another of the animals that's under huge threat, both globally and in Africa, is the pangolin. If I remember correctly, there's 9 species of pangolins around the world, mostly through Africa and leading through into Southeast Asia. We have only 1 pangolin species in this area, and their numbers have been decimated in 2 ways. One of them is that in the past, when a lot of these properties were fenced off with an electrical wire low down, pangolins would get caught in that. Their natural instinct is to back off so that the wire would then hook under the scale, and then the animal, once it started getting the shocks, would curl up. So it just through repeated shocking, sadly will kill the animal. Fortunately, with many of those fences having been taken down now, there is free range for pangolins. So now their biggest threat is once again the eastern market. They believe that there are medicinal values to the scales on the pangolin, so they have a very high value as a poached animal. Generally a very specific kind of poacher who's looking for pangolins. They are easy to track, they don't move very far, and they're actually easy to capture live, and I would imagine that they have a greater value live than dead. Now the animal that's starting to come under stress and danger in the Kruger Park area now is the elephant. As elephant numbers have slowly dwindled through a lot of Africa, once again this is becoming a target, and a poaching team could as easily hunt an elephant as they could hunt a rhino. Elephants are sought, the big tuskers are sought because the tusks, which is really just an enlarged incisor tooth, is carved and made into a work of art, an object of art.
Rhino is probably the face of the whole thing, but there's a lot more going on than just the rhino going down.
Some of these creatures have been hunted to the brink of extinction, and if poaching continues, in the next couple of decades, rhinos, elephants, pangolins, and many others could disappear forever.